It's hard to believe that Arrow was, at one point, my favorite show on TV. When it first started, it was dark, the action was very impressive, and it was unlike anything I'd seen before. Yeah, maybe the writing wasn't always the best, and the acting could be a little weak at times, but it was still the best superhero story being told on TV, and it only got better with time. You know, until Daredevil came along and did everything that Arrow was doing, but way better. Arrow's greatest strength was how it portrayed elements of the Green Arrow comics in a grounded, realistic world, clearly very inspired by Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy. It gained fan and critical acclaim, and by the end of Season 2, it had even created a new series, The Flash. So, what happened? I'm still not quite sure how it managed to go so wrong so fast, but it did. Even from the Season 3 premiere, Arrow just felt like a lesser version of itself. But to understand what Arrow became, we have to start with what it was. So, let's look at Season 1. Season 1 began with a very simple premise. Oliver Queen was stranded on an island for 5 years, and he returned to his home armed with a bow and the intention to take out everyone on a list that his father left him. Throughout the season, Oliver crossed name after name off his father's list, drew a lot of police attention due to his copious murders, and eventually uncovered a conspiracy that threatened to level an entire section of the city. An interesting and unique element of the show was the flashbacks, which showed Oliver's skill with a bow being developed and showed how he became such a ruthless, effective killer. Over the course of the season, Oliver found allies to help him, like John Diggle and Felicity Smoke, and the different personalities of these characters is what made their interplay so enjoyable. What I liked so much about Oliver as a protagonist was that he didn't pull any punches. He went after people with the intent to kill, and that was something that you didn't really see with superheroes, even if he did only end up murdering a bunch of security guards and left their bosses alive. And the main adversary that he eventually faced, Malcolm Merlyn, or the Dark Archer, was a legitimately threatening presence and had understandable motivations. John Barrowman gave an incredibly charismatic performance, and really, what else can you expect from John Barrowman? The season was overall pretty episodic, which made sense because of the idea of Oliver's list, but they slowly introduced elements of a mystery, connecting subplots and unanswered questions in some really cool ways. I was actually more interested in the story going on in the flashbacks because the island was set up in a really intriguing way, and I wanted to know more about what was going on and how Oliver and his allies on the island would fight back against it. Speaking of those allies, this season also introduced us to Slade Wilson, who turned out to be one of the most fun, charismatic, and just plain awesome characters in the entire show. A number of other DC Comics characters like Deadshot, the Huntress, Vertigo, Roy Harper, and many more were also introduced, and these versions of those characters fit very well into the world that Arrow created. If there's any downsides to Season 1 I can think of, it would probably be with some side characters. Thea felt very superfluous at times, and Laurel could be very annoying. She was my least favorite character at the end of Season 1, and some of the typical CW tropes were annoying, like the love triangle and the almost unbearable amounts of shirtless Stephen Amell. But the rest of the characters were pretty great and complex, and what I liked about them is that they were all linked in various but very believable ways, and their characters were always consistent. All in all, Season 1 of Arrow was a little uneven at times. You know, some episodes were better than other episodes, but it was all very entertaining, and had a lot of possibility for stories to explore in the future. Which brings us to Season 2, which I believe matches Season 1 in terms of quality, and surpasses it in many ways. The most notable improvement was in the main villain, because Slade Wilson finally emerges as Deathstroke. What makes him so effective as a villain isn't just his fighting skills or his Mirakuru enhanced strength, but the personal connection that he has to Oliver. We'd seen Oliver and Slade working together and becoming friends over the course of an entire season, so we felt that connection, we felt that friendship, and seeing the hatred that they had for each other when they met again was very surprising because we didn't quite know why they hated each other yet. What really made this new dynamic between Oliver and Slade work was that the reason why they hated each other made complete sense, and Slade's motivations were very well fleshed out. There was also some strong development for Oliver, as his friend Tommy's death inspired him to no longer kill people, and he moved closer to his comic book counterpart, even trying to adopt a new nickname besides the Vigilante or the Hood. The action in this season was pretty fantastic, a real step up, and the introduction of the strength-enhancing drug Mirakuru led to more stunt work, all of which looked great. The character work was also pretty well done, with Laurel, depressed after Tommy's death, falling off the deep end into alcoholism and drug abuse, and Katie Cassidy really sold it. For the first time, I was on Laurel's side. Roy Harper became a much more prevalent character and also went through his own arc, being infected with Mirakuru and dealing with the mind-altering effects, coming out on the other side of the experience stronger, more focused, and ready and able to be a part of Oliver's team in the field. Diggle and Felicity also provided a lot of support, and the relationships between characters grew stronger, which led to the team feeling more tightly knit. Season 2 just built off of Season 1 in the best of ways, which is ideally how a TV series should work, but the characters grew and evolved with the story, they faced consequences of Season 1, and where they were at the end of Season 2 made total sense. Even more comic book elements were introduced, most notably the Suicide Squad, which was comprised of villains that we'd already seen on the show, which I feel was a very smart way to do it. Season 2 expanded Arrow's universe in ways that I really didn't expect. First with the introduction of the League of Assassins through the return of Sarah Lance and a brilliant connection to Malcolm Merlyn, and the introduction of Barry Allen, which led to the first spin-off show in what quickly became the most expansive universe on TV. Season 1 ended on a defeat, and Season 2 ended on a victory, with Oliver rising above what he had been to truly save his city. I was beyond excited for Season 3, especially because the League of Assassins was set to be a major part of the plot, and Ra's al Ghul would finally be appearing. I saw no way that Arrow Season 3 could go wrong. But then it all went wrong. Like I said before, I don't really know exactly when the show became bad, but from the Season 3 premiere, the quality of the show just seemed so much lesser than it had been before. I think the big mistake right off the bat was killing Sarah, because they essentially just turned her character, who was a really awesome character, into a plot device. I know they wanted a shocking moment to start the season off, like, ooh, we killed a major character, we're so edgy. Wow, just like Game of Thrones, the shows are on the same level in every way. They set up a mystery with Sarah's death. There are multiple leads that the team tracks down, but they can't find the answer, and it turns out that Thea was brainwashed by Malcolm Merlyn, and she killed Sarah. Okay, sure.
What I've done is given you incentive. To do what? To tell Roz that you killed Sarah Lance. By right, you will be given a trial by combat with Roz. His death will erase any blood debt from his reign, including Thea's and yours.
Just to reiterate, Malcolm's plan is to pit a guy who could barely defeat him up against the greatest fighter in the DC universe. Ra's al Ghul wants to kill Thea because she's technically the one who killed Sarah, and Oliver decides that he'll fight Ra's al Ghul to the death to save his sister. Well, this can only end well, right? Well, you probably should have seen that coming, idiot. So now Oliver's dead, but it doesn't really matter because he just gets brought back to life by the character Katana. Did she use the Lazarus Pit? No, she just... Actually, they never explain how he was brought back to life. They just say...
I asked her to come here. So she could bring you back to life.
Okay. Okay. So, while our protagonist wanders around in the snow for a few episodes, the focus turns to Laurel, everyone's favorite character. Hooray! See, Laurel feels bad about Sarah dying. Well, Sarah dying again. So she decides to take up the mantle of the Black Canary and fight criminals on her own to honor her sister. This can only end well, right? Well, you probably should have seen that coming, idiot. So it basically becomes Laurel's show for a few episodes, and she needed some development, so this is welcome. And it was kinda cool to see Laurel Lance suited up as the Black Canary, and then Oliver just reappears out of nowhere, and everything's fine. At this point, I was starting to lose hope in this season, but one episode got me really excited, and it was Oliver and Thea going back to the island to train, but Slade Wilson is loose there. Mostly, I was just excited to see Manu Bennett back, but they made his character so incompetent all of a sudden, they just ruined him. The main villain of Season 2, everyone. Beaten by Thea. This season doesn't give a whole lot of good moments to any character, especially the ones they introduce. When Ray Palmer was introduced, I was excited to see how they would portray his shrinking abilities, but all he had was a discount Iron Man suit. And he hates the Arrow because Oliver's being framed for a bunch of murders by the League of Assassins, but when they face off, Ray's like, "You're a killer," and Oliver's like, "Well, I'm not killing you now," and Ray's like, "I guess that makes sense," and I'm like, that doesn't really prove his point. Why is everyone so stupid? The point where I figured that Oliver had just gone insane was when he decided to go rescue Malcolm from Ra's al Ghul. Why Oliver decides to risk the lives of all of his friends to save the man who repeatedly betrays them, I'll never know. Oliver says that he needs Malcolm to train him to fight Ra's al Ghul, but Malcolm wanted Oliver to fight Ra's al Ghul in the first place, so... And it turns out that because Oliver survived his battle with Ra's, it matches a prophecy within the League of Assassins, and Ra's asks Oliver to take his place as the head of the League. When this plot was revealed, I was very excited because it was a direction that I never expected the show to go in, and it's a conflict that could be very interesting for not only Oliver's character, but every other character connected to him as well. Yes, it's basically the same plot that Batman goes through with Ra's al Ghul in the comics, but the Batman show isn't exactly gonna do it, so whatever. So would this prove to be the shot in the arm that Arrow needed to get back on track? Well, I wrote a little song about it. No. I think the main problem is that Oliver doesn't just immediately take Ra's up on his offer, even though it makes so much sense to do so. With the League at his disposal, Oliver could clean up Starling City in a week, and he could live for such a long time that he could see endless good work done across the world. But instead, he mopes around for a few episodes because he doesn't know if he can keep accomplishing nothing all the time. So Ra's al Ghul kills some people, and the police are finally like, maybe we should try to arrest this vigilante who's been murdering people for years, but Roy gives himself up instead. See, that's a good plot development, and by faking his death, they write Roy off the show in a way that makes sense, and also because the actor who plays Roy, Colton Haynes, had been dealing with a lot of anxiety issues and wanted to be written off so he could deal with them. So all in all, that plot worked out well for the actor, and the character, and the story. It also shows that Ra's al Ghul's plan is very smart, because with Roy dead, the city believes the Arrow is dead, so now Oliver no longer has the Arrow or his company, which he lost to Ray Palmer. So Oliver is really left with nothing and no reason to stay in Starling City and no reason to not become Ra's al Ghul, which is exactly what Ra's al Ghul wants. Ra's al Ghul takes away all reason for Oliver Queen to remain as Oliver Queen, and then he forces Oliver to join the League by stabbing Thea. So Oliver is forced to put her in the Lazarus Pit to save her life, and by doing so, Oliver Queen finally joins the League of Assassins, with 3 episodes left in the season. Good thing this plot, which easily could have taken up like half the season, is now going to have barely any development. Great, wonderful. Really glad we got a whole episode about Felicity in college instead. That was much more necessary.
I can't let you rot in prison, Coop.
You can't tell them you wrote that virus. Because I already told them I did.
Cooper.
I always said I'd protect you from the cruise.
This isn't...
It's better this way. I wiped out those loans. There's no reason both of us should be in prison.